Hey guys, my name is Ruber Ramprasad. I'm a multifamily investor and mortgage agent. And in this video, we're going to talk about construction loans. Especially in the last couple of years, a lot of municipal and provincial governments are actually becoming more lenient with their zoning bylaws. This has unlocked a wave of construction and development in the private sector, nicknamed the missing middle. It's a new phenomenon where a lot of small to mid-cap investors are deploying their own capital to build these mid-rise units. We have single-family homes and a lot of condos and not much in between like a lot of the rest of the world. I think it's a great opportunity, but a key piece to making this happen is financing it. And there's a huge gap in the knowledge in that market. So today I want to talk more about that. In this video, we're going to talk about how construction draw loans work. We're going to talk a high level of what we need to qualify for these loans. And finally, we're going to talk about how we get out of these construction loans. So first, let's talk about what is construction financing and why is it different versus other types of financing. There's three types of construction financing you can get specifically for these multifamily development projects. One, CMHC construction financing. Two, conventional bank financing. And third, private capital financing. There are a lot of private capital firms who, lend specifically on this type of product. Now, key differences between them are one, you're going to get the cheapest rate with CMHC and the most expensive rate with the private capital firms. The second thing is construction loans are funded based on a concept of loan to cost. What that means is the total cost of your project, you're going to get a maximum amount. With something like CMHC financing, you can get up to 95% loan to cost. And with something like private capital financing, you could probably get 80 to 85, whereas conventional is somewhere in between. Now, what is common among all of them is the concept of construction draws. What are construction draws and how do they work? So let's say your construction project's $2 million. On a construction loan, you don't get all $2 million upfront. You get it on a draw basis as the project progresses. So the initial loan is awarded based on as a percentage of your as complete value. And as you hit different milestones, you get a little bit of that $2 million at each step of the way. Now the catch is you need to finish it first. For example, if one of your draws is for foundations need to be in place, the lender will come and inspect it, and then they will release the funds and the budget that corresponds to that foundation line item. Now, one benefit to this is on that $2 million loan, you're only going to be paying interest on what you've drawn up to that point. So you're not paying, 7 to 10% on all $2 million. If you've only pulled $200K, you're only paying interest on that. Something to keep in mind though, especially in Ontario, is there's something called the Construction Lien Act. This, protects the bank in case you don't pay your bills. They take 10% as a holdback from the advance of your construction funds. So let's say that draw is $200K. They'll hold back $20,000 in a lawyer trust account in the event you don't pay your bills and the contractor puts a lien on your property. If the contractor puts a lien on your property, obviously now the bank's collateral is at risk and they don't want that. So hence the Construction Lien Act. But keep that in mind when you're doing the numbers on your project because your 200K is actually going to be 180K. So this takes me to what you need to qualify for a construction mortgage. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is liquidity. There's the liquidity that the lender needs and there's the liquidity that I recommend. Many times I talk to clients and they're trying to figure out what is the least amount of money you need to get into a project. Having been through large construction projects myself, I will tell you right now, you want as much liquidity or access to liquidity as possible. Now that we've talked about how draws work, now you'll understand that you're going to need a significant amount of cash in order to get to your first draw. And you'll need cash in between draws in order to not run out of money mid-project. So, you really don't want to get into bad relationships with your contractors, etc., by not having money to pay them on time. Now, imagine there's a couple long lead items. Windows and doors are an easy example of things that you pay, at the beginning of the project, but you're not going to get the money back until that they're actually installed, which is close to the end of the project. There's many little things like that that will add up, and having access to liquidity is very important. So for example, in the case of the private capital firm that's going to give you 75% loan to cost, in that $2 million construction budget, sure, you are going to get 75% of it funded, but in between draws and in between floats, you're probably going to need at least another 5 to 10% of liquidity in total reserves in order to get the project done. Also important to note that something like CMHC construction financing that requires rental achievement, which means your units need to be rented before advancing your final draw, can create a liquidity crunch because your last draw can be delayed until you have those units rented. So liquidity is super, super important. And I'm going to recommend, if you talk to me, that you have more than what the bank requires. The second thing is going to be a net worth requirement. The lender is going to want to make sure that you do have net worth to fall back on if something goes wrong. At the end of the day, construction and development, things go wrong all the time, and you probably want that as well. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about takeout financing, because you're going to need that for your takeout financing anyway. The next thing you're going to need is a builder, or you need to be very experienced in this field. So as part of the submission package, the lender is going to ask who is building this project and have they done it before. Some lenders might still give you the loan with no experience, but trust me, it's not going to be cheap. Typical lender is going to look for that experience. And again, another thing you're probably going to want anyway. We've talked about how construction draws work. We've talked a little bit about requirements. And again, they vary from project to project. But I also wanted to wrap things up with talking about 3 common pitfalls that I see all the time. First one, and you think I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's a lack of liquidity. Construction and development projects need cash, or they need equity in other properties. One way or the other, you need access to capital, and there's no way around it. You can try, but it's going to be very, very stressful and very, very risky. 2, not working with an experienced team. You really need an experienced team on your side. Not having a proper GC, not having a proper architect, not having a proper planning consultant can cost you way, way more than the savings you think you're going to make by going with the cheaper guy. You get what you pay for 100%. Finally, a poor takeout financing plan. So what that means is at the end of the project, you should have a clear plan into what's called term debt or long-term debt. And your broker should really be working to help you strategize that. Now, let's say you take the private capital debt or even bank debt, to be frank. The rates are higher than what a term debt would be. You don't want to be stuck holding a construction loan interest rate for longer than you need to, and you should have a proper takeout plan. Your broker should be underwriting your exit before you even start, so you can essentially reverse engineer the loan you're going to get at the back end. Especially if you're going to be working with different investors and stuff like that, you don't want to leave more equity wrapped up in the project than you promised. That's not good for you. It's not good for the broker, not good for anybody involved. So having a takeout financing plan that is bulletproof is super, super critical. So now that we've gotten a solid primer on what construction financing is, hit the subscribe button. We're going to get very detailed in future videos on specific case studies, property walkthroughs, and so much more, so you could really understand the nitty-gritty of what a construction financing looks like on a project. And with that, I'll see you on the next video.